Okay. Hello, and I'd like to welcome everyone joining us from all around the world. This is the third event hosted by OCD Acceptance. OCD Acceptance is a platform to help bring OCD patients to health professionals and advocates. And twice a month, I will host a live event just like this one, inviting mental health professionals and advocates to share their experiences and insights of living with. On this episode, I'd like to welcome Kylie Wallace to you.
Hi guys, how are you? I just want to quickly say thank you for everyone that's tuning in, and thank you to OCD Acceptance for hosting me. It's really an honor to talk for you guys and kind of share some of my insight and hopefully teach you guys a few things along the way. So let's just go ahead and get started. Okay, so let me quickly introduce myself. I know Bowen did, but I just want to talk a little bit about myself. My name is Callie. I'm 25 years old. And today, as the title of this talk suggests, I'm going to be talking about morbid obsessions and the importance of spreading awareness and seeking like-minded support. So before I really get into the thick of what I want to talk about, I want to give you guys a little bit of insight about my experience with OCD. So when I was 22 years old, about a month or so before my 23rd birthday, I went to the doctor. I just for various things, just for a checkup, and I complained that I was a little anxious about certain things, just general things in my life. And they gave me a prescription for an antidepressant / anti-anxiety medication that is ironically used very commonly and usually very effectively to treat OCD. And I guess what happened was it just didn't mesh very well with my body chemistry, and actually was the main factor in my onset of OCD. So to make a long story very, very short, I took the medication for 3 days at the lowest dose, and on the third day, I had my full-blown onset. And truth be told, it could have happened really at any point in my life, I guess, because I had shown symptoms prior. But once the onset kind of happened, I could no longer let the thoughts go. I couldn't shake them off anymore. I couldn't get rid of them. And what happened was I clearly remember the first thought, and that was I was holding my dog, and I thought about how I was like, wow, I could so easily just break his neck or choke him. And then that really, really scared me. And it kept playing over and over in my head. And that's kind of where I want to get into the first main thing that I want to talk about. That is morbid obsessions. So morbid obsessions are kind of a lesser known subtype of obsessive compulsive disorder. And for all intents and purposes, I'm going to assume that most of us know what OCD is. So we have the obsessions and the compulsions. Those are the two main components. I'm going to assume that that's common knowledge at this point right now. But yeah, so the morbid obsessions they come in a couple different categories. So I was experiencing ones that dealt with harm. So these harm obsessions can be a range of things. They can be, you either intentionally or unintentionally causing harm to someone. So an intentional cause of harm was what I was thinking about. I could break his neck. That was me intentionally harming him. But then there's also a side that you could unintentionally cause harm to someone, and that could be through neglect. That could be through, forgetting to turn the stove off, or, forgetting to lock the door when you leave, and thinking that, because you did those things, the house is going to burn down, or that someone's going to break in and, harm someone at home. And then There's also a sexual type of morbid obsessions, and that can be the most common one that I hear a lot. People are afraid of becoming pedophiles, even if they've not shown any tendency, never were leaning towards that their entire life. It could just pop up. There could be other types of sexual obsessions, just like doing something um, that you deem immoral or just not acceptable or appropriate ever. Let's say, you know, committing rape or incest or something like that. And these are all thoughts that I've dealt with kind of on their own. And let me tell you that they are very, very scary, because what we know of OCD is not what we know. You know, we don't realize that morbid thoughts are a part of that typically, just because that's not publicized. And that's something that when it happened to me, I didn't know what was happening. And my biggest fear was not, you know, that I was going to be put away or anything. Of course, I was afraid that I, you know, was going to have to be institutionalized or something. But my biggest fear was that I was going to act on these thoughts. And one of the first things that you learn in therapy when you're trying to recover from obsessive compulsive disorder is that thoughts do not equal actions. So just because you have a thought, it's not going to suddenly synthesize into an action. It's not going to happen that way. And in my rational mind, I know that and I understand that, just like I understand that you're not suddenly going to become, you know, a sociopath at 22 or 23. But I couldn't wrap my mind around that. I kept saying, you know, what if I'm that one exception? What if I'm, you know, a case that they've not heard about? What if I don't have OCD? What if I am really a bad person and this is who I've been all along and it's suddenly blooming through? And that is a really, really scary thought. And that kind of is going to bring me into my next topic. So, why does awareness matter? Now, I think before we talk about this, we should kind of define our terms of what awareness is. So, on the surface, I think everyone is aware of OCD. So, but what does awareness mean? So, we know that everyone says, oh, I'm so OCD, or I'm so bipolar, I'm so depressed today. And if you've watched any of my videos that I make on YouTube, you know that this is one of my biggest pet peeves, is that we kind of, in our vernacular, set up this preconception of what these disorders are. So just to give you another little background tidbit about myself, I'm a painting instructor, and every day at my job, I hear someone say, oh, can you help me? I'm so OCD. I can't get this, you know, this shade of this paint right, or I have to get this line perfect, or I just can't do it the right way and it needs to be perfect. Can you help me? And I just have to kind of grin and bear it, because I know that they don't really know what they're saying, you know, that I'm sensitive to it, and I wish I wasn't so sensitive. And I think prior to my onset, I probably wasn't as sensitive. I probably said those things, or I'm sure I did, just because those are kind of, like I said, it's in our vernacular to say those things. But like I said, it's harmful to think of it that way, because it totally dismisses an entire group of people that are suffering. And awareness kind of helps in the sense that it makes us realize what we're saying is hurtful, that what it sounds silly when we say certain things. And also, I think it's really important because when I was in the emergency room the night of my onset, because I didn't know what was happening, I didn't know what was going on, and I was talking to the doctors, and I told them, listen, I'm really scared that I'm going to hurt someone, or I'm going to hurt myself or something. They looked at me like I was crazy, because they weren't aware of this form of OCD. They weren't aware. So had I gone in there and said, you know, I have this compulsion, I have to wash my hands because, you know, I'm afraid of this. That's something that's very recognizable. That's something that fits in this box that we understand of OCD. But when we have other things that we've not heard of before, it kind of throws us off, and we say, oh, I don't know what that is. That's something I can't touch. I don't know about that. You need to be supervised by someone else because I can't help you. And also on the flip side of that, people that are suffering can't seek help because they are afraid that they're going to have exactly what happened to me happen to them. And that's really, really scary. That's really upsetting that a lot of people feel that they have to suffer in silence because they don't even know what they're going through. I didn't know what OCD really was. I didn't know that for as many people as are suffering, that's as many types of OCD there really are. Because when it comes down to it, no one suffers exactly the same types of thoughts. No, everyone has this unique thing about them when it comes to this type of disorder. And that, you know, we have to acknowledge that. And I remember when I was talking to my mom about my onset, she said to me, she's like, you know, I never told anyone, but when you and your brother were born, there was a period that I was afraid that I was going to hurt you guys. I didn't want to be around you. And she suffered in silence. She didn't tell anyone. She didn't tell me, you know, she didn't tell anyone till 22 years later, you know, well after the fact, because she thought that something was seriously wrong with her. And yeah, there was something wrong. She probably had obsessive thoughts or some kind of postpartum thing going on, but she couldn't talk about it. And there are so many different stories of women who, you know, have come forward and said, you know, I'm nervous, I'm scared that this is going to happen, that I'm going to hurt my baby, or that I'm going to do this. And they've had their children taken away. They've been, you know, inspected by child services or whatever, because people don't understand that, you know, just because I say I'm worried that I'm going to do this, it doesn't mean that I want to do it. Of course, I don't want to do it. When it comes down to it, the people that want to do awful things, the people that are murderers, that are pedophiles, that are rapists, they're not concerned that what they're doing is wrong. They don't agonize over those thoughts. They don't say, oh my God, what if I do those things? And for me, you know, and for a lot of other people, it's, you know, statistically known that many people with this type of disorder contemplate or, you know, try to commit suicide. I know I thought about it, and I still think about it. And I decided a long time ago that if it ever came to the point where I really, really thought I was going to go through with one of my obsessive thoughts about harming someone or doing something awful, that if it came to that or killing myself, I would kill myself. And I can't believe I have to say that. That's, you know, that's really scary. And that's the reality for a lot of people, because they don't know that they're suffering from something that is real and that, you know, can be worked on. Okay. And that kind of leads me to the next thing that I want to talk about. And that is why it's so important to find like-minded people to help support you. So that's what I mean by that is finding other sufferers. So at first you might find them the way that I did, which is not the right way. I was seeking reassurance, and if you know anything about OCD, that is one of the number one things that you should not be doing, is seeking reassurance. But I just wanted someone to say, you know what, your fears are valid, and you're not crazy, you're not a bad person, I know what you're going through, and you know, you're not going to do these things, you're not going to act on these thoughts. So I wanted someone to just validate me and say, you know what, no, you're fine. But once I got through that stage of seeking reassurance, and I realized, wow, these people really understand what I'm talking about. These people have been there. Some have recovered. And recovery is kind of this fluid thing that we don't really, it kind of, we progress sometimes, we regress, sometimes we fully relapse. It's, you know, recovery is an ongoing thing. But if you find, say, a support group or somebody online that you can talk to that knows what you're going through, it helps in two ways. So you have someone that you can bounce ideas off of and say, hey, listen, I have this problem, without reassuring me that it's going to be okay. How do I tackle it? And then also, there's always going to be people ahead of you, just like that. And then there's going to be people behind you that you can help in the same way. So if you see someone struggling, so say they post on a forum and they say, I'm afraid this is going to happen, you can help them without reassuring. And I think that that's really important too. So you can kind of build this community of people that know what you're talking about. And truthfully, like I said before, for as many people as are suffering, that's as many types of OCD that there are, but that doesn't matter. In the end, all types are treated the same way, and you go about, your treatments in the exact same form. So if I see someone struggling with a type of OCD that I don't have, let's say, for example, scrupulosity, which is religious OCD, they might say something like, oh, I'm afraid that, if I do this, that I'm going to go to hell, or I didn't pray properly, so that means this, and that, I'm going to end up somewhere. And I could have a thought that says, I'm going to go to hell, and I could be like, all right, well, I'll meet you there. Because to me, that doesn't matter. I'm not a religious person. But even though I can't understand their thought process for that religious feeling, I know that exact feeling of anxiety that they have. I know that pit in their stomach that's building from worrying that they're going to, have something happen. It's cause and effect. It's just the same way that I worry that, I could, go into the kitchen, grab a knife and stab someone, or that I could, unintentionally leave my scissors too close to the end of the counter and my cat could knock it off and get stabbed. So that's me worrying about, doing something through neglect or whatever, because I didn't stop it. I could have stopped it. So even though I can't understand one type of OCD, I can apply my feelings of my own experiences and understand and help that person and help them through what they're going through. And that's really important because a lot of us don't have people, let's say, our families or our friends that are close to us that can do that for us. But there are a lot of communities out there that you can really find and get immersed in and learn a lot from, because there are people from all walks of life, all over the world, all over, different age groups, everything that you can imagine, shapes and sizes, whatever, it doesn't matter. They have been there, okay? And they know exactly what you're going through and they can help you. So I think on that note, I should probably wrap up. And thank you guys for watching. And I guess we can open up to any questions or anything like that. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a great talk, and thank you, Kelly, for sharing your story.
Sure.
Everything. Since we're still starting, we don't have a lot of time, so I prepared some questions. So in case they don't have any, so I can ask you myself. And since you said in your introduction that you enjoy traveling, like going outside, going around the world. So the first question is, does your OCD ever bother you during these trips? And if so, how did you handle them?
That's a good question. Yes, it's a huge factor in when I'm traveling. A lot of the trips that I go on are with friends or, whoever, and sometimes my main worry is that if I'm rooming with a friend, say in a hotel or I'm doing something, that I'm going to, hurt them in the middle of the night, or I'm going to lose my mind and do something awful. And I'll admit that the first, like say I'm going somewhere for a few weeks or whatever, those first few nights, I don't sleep at all. I don't, I monitor my own, my own sanity. I monitor their breathing to make sure I didn't do something like unconsciously that I didn't realize. And it seems crazy and it's awful and I hate it. But over time, I've learned, because I've gone on a couple trips since the onset, but my anxiety for traveling has always been bad, honestly. And the trips that I've gone on, I've just been really honest with the people that I've been with. And I said, listen, I'm going through this thing. And I kind of explain it to them. And I watch their eyes widen and they say, oh my God, this girl's crazy. She's going to do something. And I explain to them, this is what it is. And I just kind of, I deal with it that way. And then I deal with those first couple nights of sleeplessness. And I just realize, I say to myself, you know what? I'm not going to do anything. And if I do, then I do. And that's kind of how you learn to cope with it. You have to challenge that anxiety and say, yeah, well, you know what? I could do that, but I probably won't. So let's just move on. And I think that's how the best way to go about it.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. Because the more you're afraid of some thoughts, the more, you know, you're afraid to act on them.
Exactly.
And you think the thoughts are actions, which they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. So my second question is, as you suffered from OCD, what's the one thing that you wish you didn't have to lose to the disease?
That's a hard question. I think the hardest thing for me isn't necessarily, well, I guess I could say it's something that I lost, but I think the hardest thing for me is that I so clearly remember what my life was like prior to my onset. And I feel like I put a lot of things on hold, or I turned down a lot of opportunities that I should have taken because I was scared and I thought that I couldn't do it. I thought that, just like I said, I was going to go crazy and that I couldn't handle it and that, something bad was going to happen. And I think that it's caused a lot of regrets. Most of my regrets are things that I haven't done, that I didn't experience, that I said no to. And I think that's true for a lot of people. No matter what, you always regret things that you didn't do more than things that you do, you know?
Yeah, I understand. For me, I personally lost a lot of things to OCD, so opportunities
Mm-hmm.
as well. So I definitely understand what you're going through
Right.
and being through. So for my third question, like from your perspective and experience yourself, do you think like our work around raising awareness to OCD will actually able to end the stigma that's around this entire disease? I'm not saying mental illnesses, I'm just saying OCD.
Well, I think it's important to start somewhere, because, it starts with the smaller people like us, because someone has to acknowledge us first to really, for us to get anywhere. So I think that the smaller things, like I said, just people talking about it, getting an open dialogue just like this going, is what is really ultimately going to make a difference. Right now, it might just seem like, a drop in the ocean, but it has to start snowballing at some point. So we have to get people talking about it, and we have to, share what we know and just inform other people. And that's really, like I said, where it starts. I mean, that's how it started for, diseases that were not as widely accepted as they are now. So, for example, depression. That's something that, people much more openly talk about now. And I think that, it just started from people talking about it and saying, hey, listen, like, I feel this way. I need someone to acknowledge that I feel this way. And I need to know that other people feel this way. And I think that that is kind of where we're headed. I think that's where we're going. And, once I started talking about it, people started coming out of the woodwork and saying, hey, I've felt this way too. And like, let's do something about it. And I think that, like I said, that's where it all starts.
Yeah, that's true. Because, sometimes when you do these kind of work, you find it pretty hard because the stigma around the OCD is pretty strong. And
Mhm.
yeah, so in that sense, I'd like to thank Callie Wallace for joining us today, and I hope there could be like further collaboration between us in the future to help raise awareness for OCD. And I'd also like to thank you all for watching this video. And remember, if you enjoyed it, please give us a thumbs up down below. And also keep in mind that you can always subscribe to us and like us on Facebook for more talks like this. I'll leave a link below in the description. And if you have any questions, talk, or OCD, please leave a comment below so we can get back to you as soon as possible.